Welcome everybody to another episode of Fins Nation. I'm your host Louis Sung, and today we're going to be discussing the comments that were made by GM Chris Grier and assistant GM Marvin Allen as they prepare for the upcoming NFL draft, as well as the topics that were had about Tua Tagovailoa during his press conference, so that we can kind of get an idea of what we're going to be looking forward to in the next coming weeks. So before that, really quick, just want to go ahead and mention that this show is brought to you by U-Brake Wheel Fix. U-Brake Wheel Fix is the complete automotive wheel solution. Ever parked too close to the sidewalk curb? U-Brake Wheel Fix specializes in the repair of damaged wheels from bends, cracks, curb rash, or anything else. Or maybe your wheels are faded or peeling. You don't need to replace them, as U-Brake Wheel Fix can refinish them to like new. Offering complete refinish options through powder coating, machining, and polishing, U-Brake Wheel Fix is the answer to all of your wheel needs. And if you're just looking to give your ride a new look, U-Brake Wheel Fix also offers many car customizing options such as new custom wheels and tires from your favorite brands, performance upgrades, window tinting, and suspension modifications. Located just south of Aventura, you can reach Mark and his staff to really give your ride an upgrade at 305-748-0112 or online at ubrakewheelfix.com. Again, that's Mark and his staff at 305-748-0112 or online at ubrakewheelfix.com. They're also really active on all social media platforms, so you can shoot them a DM on Instagram, Facebook, or Twitter at ubrakewheelfix and get an estimate in just minutes. So don't delay, go to U-Brake Wheel Fix and start customizing your ride to show off your Dolphins fandom today. This show is also brought to you by PrizePicks.com. PrizePicks.com is the revolutionary fantasy platform where you can now pick up to 6 different players across professional sports leagues. Whether that's the NFL, the NBA, the MLB, one of each, it's up to you to decide. And just choose whether your chosen player will get more or less than their projected stat. They give you free squares, special Taco Tuesday promos, Flex Friday specials to where you get your money back if you lose or multiply the amount of money you can win. So with offers like that, it's hard to justify not signing up. So use the promo code 5, that's FIVE, and they will match up to $100 on your initial deposit when you sign up. Again, that's promo code 5, spell that out, FIVE. Go to PrizePicks.com, deposit $100, you get $100 back. Go to PrizePicks.com and get started winning today. All right, folks, so let's get into this. I know there's a lot to discuss. I know there's a lot of things that were said, so we're going to try to squeeze as much as we can into this 15 to 20 minute section here. So let's go ahead and address the elephant in the room here, shall we? The very first question that was asked during the joint press conference with Chris Grier and Marvin Allen is, what exactly do the Miami Dolphins intend to do with the right tackle position? And the very first thing that was said was that the expectation is that Austin Jackson is going to be the starter at right tackle, and that they're excited for him. Now, I'm pretty sure that the only people who are excited for Austin Jackson at this point are Chris Grier and Marvin Allen themselves. And, of course, the coaching staff. We can't ignore the coaching staff, right? They cited injuries as being one of the main issues that Austin Jackson was going through. And we all know that Austin Jackson has had his injury struggles in the past, so maybe there's something to that. Because, again, this is the same thing that I keep bringing up over and over again, and I think it's more and more starting to look like it's the truth. The Miami Dolphins are looking at the first 14 plays that Austin Jackson had during the New England Patriots game in Week 1 of the 2022 season, and they're basically saying, this is the Austin Jackson we can potentially get, not the Austin Jackson that we've had every other single time besides that. But that's the problem in and of itself, isn't it? They're basically holding out hope that Austin Jackson can be that guy that we saw once instead of the guy that we've literally seen every other single time that he's ever done anything for the team. Something to keep in mind is that this is, of course, the lying season, right? Everybody talks about it. It's the smoke screen. It's not what they really think. They're just trying to get everybody to think that's what they think. So maybe they don't really think that Austin Jackson is worthy of being the starter. Maybe they don't really think that Austin Jackson is just going to be able to waltz into the training camp and say, you know what, I'm the guy now because they said that I'm the guy. Maybe the Miami Dolphins do plan on drafting somebody like a DeJuan Jones. Maybe they do plan on bringing in some veteran competition somewhere after the draft is over, after the second wave of free agency has truly hit. So maybe all that is still in play. But I am one who doesn't necessarily look at everything that is said and just pretends that it's just not true. Because in one breath, you're saying that Tua Tagovailoa is our guy, and we're going to make sure that we build around him, and we're going to make sure that we do everything we can to give him the tools he needs to succeed. And we look at that and say, you know what? Yeah, that's tracks. That's absolutely the truth. But then when they talk about Austin Jackson and they think that he's worthy of being the starter and that he's going to have a chance to compete and they expect him to be the starter going in the training camp, etc., well, now that's a lie. Well, why is one thing a lie and the other thing the truth? This is the same thing I said a couple of shows ago when we had the competition between Dan Orlovsky and Keyshawn Johnson. One is a genius and one is an idiot, depending on who it is you like the most. Whose message do you resonate with? Whichever one you resonate with most, that's the truth because I said so. See, that's not how this game works. If you think that Chris Grier and Marvin Allen are telling the truth when they say that Tua Tagovailoa is their guy and they're doing everything they can to build around him, which does seem to be what they are trying to do based on the moves that have been made this offseason, then it stands to reason that when it comes to the Austin Jackson situation, they must be telling the truth about that as well, because again, Austin Jackson was picked by Chris Grier. He's obviously got some investment in him, and again, those 14 snaps, I'm sure they're going to hang on to those real tight, because those may be the only snaps that they can look at with Austin Jackson and say, this is why we're still investing with him. So, like it or not, it looks like Austin Jackson is going to be the projected starter for the 2023 season. And I know that a lot of people are going to look at that and say, no, we don't like it. We think that's the worst idea ever. And again, I do understand it. I completely understand why everybody feels that way. I particularly don't like the idea either. I think that this is a terrible idea, and I think it's very naive of the Dolphins to just assume that Austin Jackson can be the superstar player that somehow Chris Grier imagines him to be able to do. Now, to be fair, again, we've had this discussion before as well. Austin Jackson does seem to be working hard. This is going to be the first year that he's been in the Dolphins that he's going to have the same offense more than 1 year in a row, so he doesn't have to learn everything from scratch. He can just continue building on what he did last time. But still, nevertheless, I don't think that this is the way the Miami Dolphins should do things. I think they should draft somebody eventually, maybe not with the 51st overall pick, because I think he can get a better player at that position at that point. Because if you're going to draft a project, I think you should draft a project that is, I guess, more useful at the time. So we will figure things out. I think that it's going to be very interesting for them to figure out what they're going to do. Speaking of which, right guard, Robert Hunt, it doesn't look like the Miami Dolphins have any intentions of moving him from there, which is perfectly fine with me because Robert Hunt is a Pro Bowl level guard when he is playing at full strength. So I'm good with that. I'm perfectly happy with that decision that they're making. So we'll go ahead and we'll move on to the next thing. So one of the things that really caught my attention was when Marvin Allen talked about Channing Tindall and Eric Ezukanma. So one of the things that they said, and I'll go ahead and I'll just read the quote here because it's very interesting how they're viewing it. Because so many people were saying, why isn't Channing Tindall getting a chance to play? Why isn't Eric Ezukanma getting a chance to play? In the case of Ezukanma, we were told that it was because Wes Welker said that he wasn't ready to play yet, and that was just simple as that. So, but what did that leave Channing Tindall, who was drafted first before Ezukanma? Why wasn't he getting a chance to play? He was supposed to be this super fast linebacker who could jump from sideline to sideline and get some real work done. But they weren't being used. So what was the deal? One of the very interesting things that was said was that when the Dolphins selected both those players, they knew the progression for both of them would be in the future. So they literally drafted Ezukanma and Channing Tindall with the foreknowledge that these two are not going to be heavy contributors right away. Because that's what most fans look at, right? They look at these players and they say, these guys are going to be contributors right away. We want every single draft pick to be able to leapfrog somebody on the depth chart because they're just that good. And I can understand that. Of course you want your draft picks to be so really good that they're good enough to just bounce over veterans who have already been there. That would be fantastic. Is it realistic, though? Not really. So with Channing Tindall and Eric Ezukanma, thankfully, we had, at least in the wide receiver position, we had enough talent there that Ezukanma's development did not need to be rushed. Channing Tindall, on the other hand, he did get a few opportunities to try and be a quarterback spy. It didn't work out so good because he didn't really know where he was supposed to be or where his assignments were that well. So he kind of got exposed on that front. So maybe now in year 2, with a different defensive coordinator, with Vic Fangio running the show, maybe Channing Tindall will have a chance to actually show out and start learning the process in a way that he can actually contribute in 2023. So that would be very interesting to see. I'm hoping that's the case, but it does speak volumes that they're willing to freely admit, yes, we absolutely drafted these guys with the idea that they're going to be actively playing later down the line. They didn't want them to necessarily play in 2022. It almost sounds like the way that it's worded that if they had to be major contributors during their rookie seasons, something probably went horribly wrong. So there it is. Eric Ezukanma and Channing Tindall, those are year 2 and year 3 on players. They're not designed and they were not drafted with their first years in mind. So what else came up in the discussion? Okay, the running back position. So how about that? So one day off of the Dalvin Cook rumors being the topic of discussion, now we hear from Marvin Allen, who says that they're happy with the running backs they have since they brought them all back. Obviously, that is the case. It's not hard to figure out. They like Raheem Mostert. They like Jeff Wilson. They like Savon Ahmed. And for some reason, they like Myles Gaskin as well. So all that stuff is not new. But here's what he said right after that. They're keeping their eyes open, what's available in the draft and free agency, and they're looking at every opportunity to bring in good football players, and running back is a key component. And they're looking for the best players they can find. Okay, so that definitely was not a confirmation that they're content with Raheem Mostert and Jeff Wilson. So maybe the Dalvin Cook stuff is still very strong. Maybe it's not just rumors. Maybe the Miami Dolphins are really just keeping a very close eye on the Minnesota Vikings to see what they do with Dalvin Cook. And if they do decide to move on from him, if at this point, I would be shocked if the Dolphins did not make him an offer. I would be absolutely baffled if the Miami Dolphins decide to let Dalvin Cook go if the Vikings decide to release him. And who knows, maybe the trade can still happen. Maybe the trade will still come about simply because the Vikings will have no choice but to trade him for something because they realize they're not going to get anything for him. And if the Dolphins are willing to say, listen, we will trade you a future round draft pick in order to get our hands on your running back. Nobody else is competing for him. Nobody else is offering anything for him. Just take what we're giving you and run with it. Because again, I say, getting something is better than getting nothing. And if what we're hearing is that the Vikings are not really getting any trade offers for him, then I still say that getting something is better than getting nothing. So the Vikings will just have to say, you know what, Miami Dolphins, you're right. Here, this is what we are offering. This is what we'll take. Thank you very much. Have a nice day. Now, here's an interesting tidbit that I found very interesting. So they did discuss a little bit about adding Chosen Anderson, again, for anybody who doesn't know, formerly known as Robbie Anderson, the super speedster from the New York Jets. So with Chosen Anderson, apparently that discussion had been going on for a couple of weeks. Per Chris Grier, his agent reached out to the Miami Dolphins and basically said, hey, Chosen Anderson wants to come and play at home. So again, Chosen Anderson is a South Florida native. He played down here. He enjoys South Florida. He wanted to come and play for the Miami Dolphins. So it's very interesting just how much work went into this last-minute veteran addition, who now we know is going to be like a 1-year, $1-point-something million deal. I don't have the exact numbers in front of me, but it's basically painfully cheap, especially for somebody who does have the potential of a Robbie Anderson. So apparently Chris Grier talked to him for over an hour and a half. Wes Welker talked to him. Mike McDaniel talked to him. It's funny because in a weird sort of way, Chris Grier was giving the impression that he was trying to look out for Chosen Anderson's best interest. Obviously, he's looking out for the Miami Dolphins' best interest. But the simple fact is, he basically told Chosen Anderson, listen, you better check and see what these other teams are willing to offer you because you shouldn't rush through this decision. But ultimately, Chosen Anderson chose the Miami Dolphins at that extremely low rate. Is it possible that there were no other options for this guy? Were no other teams even remotely interested in Chosen Anderson for one reason or another? Or did Chosen Anderson just really, really want to be in Miami? Did he really want to come home and play? That's a distinct possibility. There is also the possibility that this contract is just you better prove yourself if you intend to be on this roster. And maybe it's a combination of both things. Chris Grier literally told them that they already have 2 players that are going to be the starters. There's no questions about it. And of course, Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, Chosen Anderson doesn't stand a chance to beat out those guys. So they basically signed him, but they basically gave it with a proviso. Listen, understand something. We already have a very talented wide receiver room. They're not guaranteeing anything for Chosen Anderson. And that's very interesting because for a guy who has had a career like a Chosen Anderson, he hasn't been a superstar, but he has superstar potential. And he still went ahead and said, you know what? I don't care. I just want to come and play for Miami. So you can see the transformation that has fully taken place at this point. Free agents and other teams' players want to come to Miami. They want to play for Mike McDaniel. On defense, they want to play for Vic Fangio. I can go back to some quotes here from Xavier Howard discussing the whole Vic Fangio thing. He even talked about how Vic Fangio's defense has always been top 5, so he's looking forward to having him on his side and improving the defense. So just straight up, Xavier Howard is loving the Vic Fangio edition. He obviously loves the Jalen Ramsey edition. He said it straight up during the press conference today, because Xavier Howard also talked to the press, that he loves that Jalen Ramsey is there now, and they're going to push each other to become some of the best in the whole NFL, if they're not already. So it's going to be fantastic. I really believe that. So once again, I boil this down to, what is it that the Miami Dolphins are going to be able to accomplish? If Tua Tagovailoa stays healthy, I still believe that there's no limit to what the Dolphins can fully accomplish, because you have everything else in place, and they're still adding more pieces with veteran players who at one point may have been stars, but then their star kind of fell a little bit because they got older or they got injured, but they all seem to want to revitalize their career with the Dolphins. You would think about this for a second. If you are a chosen Anderson and you are looking for a new home, would you not want to try to land someplace where you know for a fact the quarterback is a superstar? Why don't you try to land with the Buffalo Bills? Why don't you try to land with the Kansas City Chiefs? You've got Josh Allen with Buffalo. You got Patrick Mahomes with the Chiefs. They almost made a Super Bowl in Philadelphia. Why don't you go play with Jalen Hurts, who just became the highest paid player in NFL history? You chose Miami. Yes, I understand the home team discount. I understand that he wants to come home. But don't you think you would want to worry more about your career overall? Where would you have the most place to shine? Conventional wisdom would have them say, you want to play with a quarterback who can make you look really good. He still chose Miami. So either he just really wanted to play at home more than anything else in the world, and he's just going to take the rest of this time off and just make a cool million, or he truly believes that these Miami Dolphins can do something to make him look good. And that is an attitude that we have not seen in a very long time. So get excited, because the culture has officially changed. It has changed. And Tua, along with Mike McDaniel, along with Chris Grier, are at the forefront of that change. You cannot separate one from the other. They're all intermingled now. This could very well be the Super Bowl run, people. So keep your fingers crossed that everybody important stays healthy, and everybody else too. I don't want to make it sound like only the good players deserve to be healthy. You know what I'm talking about. This Miami Dolphins team could go further than we've seen them go in a very, very long time. And I'm looking forward to it. We're going to go ahead and call it here. This was just a brief summary of everything that happened in the press conference. But with that said, if you haven't already done so, go check out You Brake Wheel Fix for any of your car needs. If you need to get your windows tinted, you need your suspension modified, if you need to actually get your wheels fixed, they can go ahead and help you out. Reach out to Mark and his staff at 305-748-0112. Again, that's 305-748-0112. Or you can send them a DM on Instagram, Facebook, or Twitter at You Brake Wheel Fix, or go check out their website at youbrakewheelfix.com to get an estimate in just minutes. And of course, prizepicks.com. If you haven't already checked them out, use the promo code 5, that's FIVE, and they will match up to $100 on your initial deposit when you sign up using that promo code. That means PrizePicks will give you a free $100 if you deposit up to $100 when you go ahead and sign up using that promo code. You can play on their dime before you have to play on your dime. So again, prizepicks.com, promo code 5, go and sign up today. We will see you all next time for another episode of Fids Nation.